Litchfield Budget Committee to order. Today is November 6th, 2014, and if we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next agenda item is public input. Is there any public input tonight? Hearing none and seeing none. Review and additions to the agenda. The only thing I have is just the next agenda item, which is minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. So I'm not aware of any other changes. So then moving on to minutes, we have, last week we had October 23rd's minutes. They were late in getting to everybody and not everybody had a chance to read them. So if there are any changes or additions, deletions.
For the minutes on October 23rd, on page 9, row 19, I think it's just a typo. That's page 9, row 19. Again, it says upgrade. I think it should say update. And are we approving the minutes separately or together?
I was going to suggest that we do them separately.
Perfect. I'll make a motion to review or to approve the amended minutes for October 23rd.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Now moving to the October 30th minutes.
Just one quick update here. On page 1, row 4, the date should just be October 30th.
I caught that.
Okay, great.
And also on the last page.
Oh, I missed that one.
The vote, the adjourn vote
Was off.
was, well, I put 9-0, should be 8-0. I caught that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other changes? Is there a motion to approve them as amended?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
So it's 8-1. All right, moving on to correspondence. I think we had some expense report updates, and we did have an email from Frank Byron about gasoline futures information that he had forwarded to me and to the committee. Other than that, I didn't have any correspondence. Moving right into town business then, and beginning with budget review. How do you want to work it this week?
Why don't we start with 4311.1, which is the road agent office.
This budget is unchanged from the budget you approved last year. We made a few adjustments to accommodate the default budget here after town meeting. So what this proposed budget does, it restores the level of consulting engineer services that we had previously recommended and brings up some of it increases the propane line by $1,000.
Any questions?
Why a large jump in propane?
Mainly just what our run rate had been when we were calculating this budget out. We were we were almost all the way through the $5,000 line before any cold weather started for this part of the year.
Anything else?
Just so I understand again, that's not on meters, that's how much you put in a tank, right? So it's not...
Right.
Okay.
For consulting engineer services, do you have a plan for 15 laid out that we're going to need services?
We always need services. No, I'm not being flip, but I mean, we have roads that constantly need to be
Understood.
updated, designed, so that it would be the ongoing parts of whatever plans we have for roads. I mean, this year it was a little bit more intensive because the work we did on Mike Lane was a full, serious rebuild, so we consumed a little bit more than we thought. Depending on what projects we end up funding through what comes out of the selectmen and here in town meeting, we may have some additional design work to do there. So that's, I can't say, oh yeah, we're doing specifically this, but, if we rebuild Pilgrim, there are costs with that. If we do parts of Nessun there may be costs with that. It all depends on where we end up going.
Is any of that covered by the road grant that we get, the highway block grant, or?
Well, no. Well, yes and no. It all goes into the same pot, so which bucket do you want to put it in? And arguably, that's one of the things here, if you look at, we spent $19,000 here this year, there's about $8,000 that was specifically Mike Lane. I could sit here and put it in the construction budget as well, and so we just put it in engineering this year instead of putting it in construction.
So back to the original question, is there a 15 plan for roads?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, there is.
But back to what you just said, Jason, I would think that you would charge off to the specific project, the costs associated with that, and that those fees would belong in that project as opposed to in this general consulting one.
We can put them wherever people
Well, I'm just-
feel it's
I'm just
appropriate.
saying that's what I would typically think you'd want to do, is to charge all the costs with a specific project to that project. I mean, that's what you've been doing all along.
Yeah.
And if that were the case, then what would we be spending this year?
You would have spent 12,000 through September.
Okay. And last year was like 13,000 for the year.
I think, was it 13 or was it over? I don't have last year in front of me. I think we've tended to overspend that line more than underspend that line.
Yeah, I think I do have it, though, it's 13,143.
Yeah, it's about.
Yeah. I have it.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
So that gives me an idea of where the last couple of years, this year, and last year would be if the project were charged to the project.
Right, but then you're going to see the project line larger. So, I mean, all we're doing is shuffling dollars around. If
No,
you're
no, no,
fixated
no, no.
on the line,
Well,
you
you're
are
not.
correct. If you're fixated on the big picture, then we just move
No,
them
you're
around.
not, you're not, because if you're using the highway block grant money for that road project, that pays for this, and you don't have to raise that amount of money from taxes. So it's not the same.
An industry
But-
standard in construction, industry standard in this construction, all costs go to the construction job, go to that particular
I
job.
wouldn't say there's an industry standard in construction. I've done construction in industry and it's all over the place.
It's behind us,
So,
though.
okay.
I think it probably.
But the answer to the question that Bill's asking is, we have budgeted on a separate line the engineering costs. Now, the problem is they have to come from somewhere. If you put them into the highway construction line, you will be decreasing the amount of money available for highway construction. So we'll have to raise that amount of money.
No, you don't.
We don't do the construction then. You either have to do the
Look at
construction.
Frank. That money is there to pay for the cost to rebuild the roads. And the design of the road is part of that cost. So the fact that you now have to take out the highway block grant money doesn't mean that you have come up short. It just means you still have the money, you're just not spending as much as you thought you're going to spend on a particular road project.
I guess you could look at it that you're not going to spend as much as you thought you're going to spend, or you can look at it that we have to spend a certain amount of money to engineer these projects. If you want to take it out of highway block grant, then you're not going to get, you're going against the vote of the citizens of the town when they voted to dedicate that to road construction.
That's not true. If the
And
if the
of
design,
course it's
if the
true.
design, Frank, if the design of the road has to be done to do the road construction, that's all the cost of the project. Now, come on, you know that.
Yeah.
This
In
past
the
year-
in the old days, this line item was used to look out in the future.
And that's
we
what
might
it's used
wanna
for
do.
now.
But now, when you have a specific project, in the same year that the consulting costs are there, it belongs to that project.
The projects are designed from year to year. So what ends up happening is we have a program that allows us to forecast out what roads we need to address on a particular year.
Agreed.
What happens is the road agent, and the road agent can talk to this, goes and gets the engineering firms to look at that project that he's going to do next year, Bill.
And when does that get paid for?
It gets paid for the year they look at it. So it would get paid, for example, for the 15 projects
So
and
what
14.
you're saying is that this consulting work that's in this year's actual is for work to be done next year?
It is work both this year and next year.
There are,
Okay, look, if you don't like the fact that we put this year's Mike Lane project engineering here, I can go ask the finance office to do a journal entry tomorrow. The money is still money we have to spend.
When are you doing Jeff Lane? This year or next year?
Jeff Lane? No, I'm sorry, Mike. Mike, we did it this year.
And, yeah, then it belongs.
Okay, so if you
it belongs
want me to
the
move 7,000 over, I'll move 7,000 over.
No, I don't, you can do what you want. I
But-
just want to get a handle on how you're charging off the consulting fees, and I don't think it's correct to charge off consulting fees for a project that you're doing the same year you're doing the consulting. I think that belongs against the project. Personal opinion, that's all.
All right, go ahead, Dave.
I will just say that oftentimes I bid projects that don't happen for 2 or 3 years,
Yep.
and so it's kind of,
And then that belongs in the consulting line.
Dan just said it.
Mr. Pinciero, if you can explain what,
Dan just said it, that we had engineering done the year prior to. Doesn't necessarily mean that project, depending on how much money we have, if that project gets done.
Jack,
Money.
all I'm looking at is what we spent to date this year, okay? So I can get a good handle what the consulting costs have been this year, last year, how do they track together? And if I see something in there that looks like it should have been applied against the project that is done this year, and the consulting is done this year, then I say, when I look at this year's actuals, it's too high.
Now, all I'm going to ask is, can you remember this comment for about 5 to 10 minutes when we get to the road maintenance budget? Because I want to get back to the offset.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah,
There
explain it a little better.
there is a connection, so I think you'll understand why I'm saying big picture when we get to that point.
All right, is there anything more for the road agent's budget? All right, moving on then, we're doing highway and streets,
4312.1.
okay?
I'm going to jump ahead to the very point I was trying to make. And I will go back and do the other lines in order that you want then. But if you look at line 573, road maintenance improvement,
Right.
okay, well, you see what we did this calendar year, when we adjusted the default budgets, we took $10,000 out of that, okay? Now, so what, that, in my mind, was in part our offset, because what we talked about after town meeting, we had the operating budget, we had a warrant article that passed as well. So what Jack and I talked about is I said, okay, the voters have, through these areas, given you this kitty of money, the operating budget block grant money, the $25,000 for, in this line, and the warrant article money. Let's go figure out how much we can get done for all of that, and let's spend all of that money on paving. So those 3 areas of spend represent pure paving, and because that was sort of the target that Jack was working with, I shuffled off I knew that I needed to borrow from from somewhere to offset the increased engineering. So that's where I spent more in engineering. So that's how I looked at the big picture.
Yeah, but the voters voted default budget, and they didn't vote specifically money for this or money for that, other than the warrant article.
Right, the warrant article and the block grant, which was baked into this budget. So this was,
$25,000 has been in this budget for many, many years, and the Budget Committee's always supported that, and they had it in there for things you didn't know about to take care of it as they came up, okay? This year, you made it 15, you already spent 17 this year
right,
on that. The year before, you spent 20,000 on it,
Yeah.
okay? So, to me, it's not a juggling of money to do what you can do, because this has always been a miscellaneous account.
Yeah.
line item.
And we put all of the road money we had available to us together and said, now that we know what we have available, let's go get as much done as we can. That's why we did as much as we did this year. But that's sort of where my thinking is on it, is.
I understand your thinking.
Yeah, and so that's where the offset was. You can, going back to, any other questions sort of on that, sort of the pavement piece?
You look at me?
No, I'm gonna look at you on a run rate. I have a question saved up for you, Mr. Cutter, just you wait.
Let's stay in this line for just a second, Jason. Okay. So you're going back to 25,000 this year,
Oh, yeah.
okay? And what happened with consulting fees?
They went up too.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, they all went up. We had to cut places this year, so, in the ideal world, I would have had more paving.
Gotcha.
So, before we leave paving, and then, I'll jump down quickly, 730, the highway block grant improvements, the 173,000, that represents a pass-through. That's what our best estimate for revenue from the state will be. So that's not real new spending, because in the revenues shows 173 coming in. So that's just the function of gross appropriating.
Well, what's the actual expenses on the highway block grant? Or on the 730 account, excuse me?
Year to date,
Yeah.
it should be. It will likely be showing much less than that, because we haven't booked retainage yet, if my feeling is right. Yeah, we've booked $148,000 there. We have retainage for the Mike Lane project. Do we have retainage for anything else, Jack? Just Mike? Just Mike. That we haven't booked to that line yet. Whatever, and so that'll be shown as committed money in that line. And I think the rest, that will consume the balance of that line. Trust me, if there was any money for pavement left, the road agent would be looking for a way to spend it, because we know what our backlog of pavement needs is still in the town, so.
Any other questions on the paving part?
Just on the actual warrant article for the grant, was all of that money spent?
Warrant article, the warrant article, I think, would all be spent. Let me see. If I ran that report. We've spent everything but $1,520 out of that line.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What line is that?
That is, you asked about the warrant article. So that shows up as, on the account reports down in 4916. It's near the bottom of the spending, the expense reports.
It really, you don't meld it into the operating?
No, we don't take the articles and stick them back into the budget.
Until the end of the year?
We don't ever stick them into the operating budget.
Doesn't that money, if it's a warrant, it carries over and it stays for that purpose?
In some cases, yes, in some cases, no. There are some that are non-lapsing, where it carries over for that purpose. There are others that, if it's not spent, it goes to the fund balance, or the selectmen can encumber it. So it depends on the nature of the article.
Anything else? All right, where do you want to take us?
I can hit the other places where we have change, if that probably
right.
makes the most sense.
Yep.
The equipment rental charges, we rent a brush hog each, we've been renting it the past couple of years to do heavy-duty roadside cleaning. We rent for about, what do we do, a week to 10 days? A week.
7 days.
7 days, so.
Did we not do it this past year?
We did do it this past year.
Oh, just the money came from someplace else?
Yeah, the money ended up coming from someplace else. In March, we said, if we have to put it off, we'll put it off. Then, as late summer came around, we realized, okay, we have the funds to do it. And it's an important thing to do. I mean, it's short money to protect your roads.
So where's the actual show up?
Where's the actual show up? The actual should show up in, one second, let me go back to that line. I think it'll show up actually in that.
It shows up
In your
440.
expense report, does it show up in that line this year?
440?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there?
It says the default 0, but
29.51?
there's an expense against it.
Yep. Yeah, 2951.
And the actuals?
Yeah.
Year-to-date, nothing. Why do I have 0?
No, because that's what we budgeted.
No.
Oh, it's
no. Year-to-date.
budgeted 0.
We budgeted 0.
Right.
Yeah, we rebudgeted 0, but when we have it, we spend it, and then we're not going to hide it someplace else. It's equipment rental, that's where it goes.
Is it just a brush hog that hangs off the back of a tractor with a 3-point hitch?
No, it's a boom type.
Ah, okay.
We're expecting a slight increase, or actually restoring back. We pulled back a little this year on the 572 under road sweeping. So we're looking to restore back to the budget we had previously.
Did we just do less roads, or?
No, I talked to Mr. Hale because we were in default, he referred back to the previous year.
Previous year was 7560.
75. What he paid.
So
he
you
went with
brought it,
75.
so you brought up to 8,000? Not the previous year, then,
Yep.
right?
What?
The previous year was $7,500.
Right, and we expected this year that for the same level of service, it was going to be 8.
Cost you 7.
And that's what
Last
road
year.
agents
Well,
just.
that was because I
Yep.
approached him about the default.
Okay,
He dropped it to 7,000 for it.
Yeah.
for the same work?
He did exactly the same one.
So my question was of
Actually,
same work.
thank
Yeah.
you for it.
Yeah.
Tree removal, 571.
Mm-hmm.
How much have you spent?
Probably nothing yet. Is that?
I can tell you it's nothing.
Yeah, okay, but feel free to save the time and not make me hunt for
But
them.
hold on, my expenses are as of a month and a half
Yeah.
ago, so.
Yeah, there are always trees that we need to remove. Honestly, we tend to wait to the fall. If we haven't had anything in the spring that needs to come, this is the time of year when
First snow.
you start having issues, so that's really the issue, that's really the rationale on that.
Didn't PSNH do a lot of work with trees?
A year or so ago.
To remove them from their telephone lines, yeah.
Yeah. Been a major initiative over the last couple of years.
Pulled back a little bit on catch basin repairs. I guess, the next really notable area is salt purchases. You may recall, we have dialed back that salt number really over road agent's tenure here. We aim to do it for 1,000, 1,100, and, or 1,000, and then what we're trying to do is get back to an additional 200, so we'll have 1,200 tons altogether. This year, we ended up purchasing 1,300 tons, so we're still lagging where we were this current year. Part of what has happened for us is we got lucky a year or two because we had stockpile left over. Winter was light until early this year, when winter was ugly quickly, and it was a salt demanding type winter. So this is basically just trying to get us back to a normal equilibrium. And what was, Mr. Cutter, what is our run rate to date on that?
Oh, which one?
That would be 686.
I have it at 76 grand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we went high this year because we needed more, and then also because we had some storage, we can't hold all of our salt all at once. So we ran short during one of the times where, our regular suppliers weren't able to supply us. So we paid a substantially higher price than that $49 for a stretch in order to have salt. You may remember there was like a wave during a couple weeks late in the winter when nobody had it. So it doesn't matter who your contract was with.
Okay.
So those were the issues we had this year.
Any reason why you haven't done much in the way of purchasing of gravel this year?
Gravel, is that what you asked?
Gravel?
Yeah, that was it.
Gravel was just a timing issue. The availability of
Still
enough
have-
staffing.
We still have some gravel
Yeah,
that we haven't kept with it.
yeah.
I've been dealing with vacation time, people gone.
So you still have to buy something? That was on-
Yeah, if the weather holds for us, we'll do
Actually, you'll see it in
it.
the next couple of days. and-
Yeah,
Because you only spent $129 so far this year.
yeah.
And
1,600 last year.
Gravel's not very expensive.
and the year before was 1,600.
Right.
So how do we have to 25?
Well, remember though, last year where we had 1,600, we also carried over an encumbrance from the prior year. So we had spent part of that down too. We grabbed some extra because we did a more intensive gravel work last spring, in spring of 13, so.
That's where it gets fuzzy because these accounts have changed.
We don't gravel, the roads break up. It's that simple. Try to get to all the roads over a period of time, but it doesn't always happen.
Is that for the road widening, the shoulders?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did a lot of graveling this year, early. All the areas of Albuquerque, we did.
We had to get the corner of Albuquerque and Page, Jack.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible, you know? And that is, if you went to the board up at the shop, it's on there to be done next week. Because the help will be back. So you'll see expenditure there, I guess that's what I'm saying. Same thing with sand, we'll be spending, the next 2 weeks, we'll be spending money in sand.
I believe the bin was empty, right, then when we went on the tour?
I've been trying to hold off, to not bring it in before we really need it, because it gets so wet in there.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll go to the top now. Wages of workmen, 90,000, looks reasonable. Okay. Overtime, 16,000. Last year was 14,000, I think, Jason.
Okay, and how much has it been this year?
11,000 this year.
Before we have any,
Yeah.
Before November, December,
I understand.
yeah.
No, I mean, it could be high by 1,000 too, maybe yes, maybe no. Contractor services, looks reasonable.
Yeah, I'm glad you think reasonable. It's a little, it's a little.
What happened?
It's a little scary on our end when you're at 70,000 now and on an $80,000 line before any snow has fallen. This
It's scary
fall.
for this year.
It's scary for this year, exactly.
I'm saying next year, it looks like a reasonable number. Okay, we did tree, we did sweeping, did maintenance, culvert, catch basin cleanouts. Only spent 5,000 this year on that.
And how much do we spend on catch basin replacement?
I'm sorry?
And because we shifted more of that, we spent 5,000 on cleanouts and we've spent 86 so far in replacement.
Right.
We've got more bills coming.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, that was sort of the trade-off we had was,
you didn't, okay. You didn't clean as many catch basins,
Right.
is what you're saying.
Right, we backed off on the catch basin cleaning, so we'd have some more space. Yeah, and you'll see, yeah, I mean, we spent 13.7 so far this year, so, and you'll see what next year's budget between those two lines is 14,000.
Yeah, I'm just staying with the catch basins, because you intentionally did not clean as many as you usually do, is that correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
yes.
And so what are you gonna do next year? Get back on
Next
the
year, we're
the same routine,
gonna pick up where we left off last year.
which
Yeah,
is doing,
which is try to catch back up again to the plan.
50% each year. is
Okay.
what we're trying
Right.
to do.
okay. And in 2013, that is basically what you did?
I think we tried to do it in, I think that was the first year. We
Yeah,
tried,
in 13, we did do 50%.
Yeah, and that cost you almost $12,000.
Right.
And you're asking for $9,000 this year, next year. Okay.
What does your stormwater management plan mandate for cleaning, sweeping?
we have to do, the sweeping, but the basin cleanouts are on a even more gradual schedule. I think a third was our target for the old stormwater plan. We opted, and that's why I think we started looking at it in 12 or 13, because the sense that we had when we were preparing for one of the, probably I think it was Sandy or one of the storms that was coming up here, we did the whirlwind and said, we should do more basins faster because they were filling in. So, and someday, we will have new stormwater compliance to deal with.
Soon.
General supplies,
Yeah.
this is a miscellaneous,
This is kind of the catch-all for, small tools, hand tools, nuts, bolts, everything else. And you'll notice, we have not found the right number yet to put in that line. Because if
Yeah.
you look historically,
this year you spent 45 already.
yeah, exactly.
Year before you spent 26, or 27.
Yeah, and that was the first year we kind of combined a few things, so it's,
So it's a, it's
Yeah.
Okay,
We're trying to get a little more, we have a bin now up there where we have nuts and bolts and screws instead of somebody needing, 10 bolts. We'll run down and get 10 at Julie's. We don't do that anymore. We get them from Jack, whatever it is. And it works out well. I mean, I think anybody that out there working knows that if you got a plow blade down and you need 10 bolts, you don't want somebody running to Manchester to get 10 bolts, so we stock it, so that, and it costs us, because they come in about every 5 weeks and stock it.
okay. The vehicle fuel is based upon your guess of what it's gonna cost you for 32 gallon.
yeah, and that's sort of what our plan has been there, so, yeah.
Okay. Why is the 740 line down, Jason?
Why is the
That's
seven,
an equipment purchase.
why is the seven?
I'm happy to see it, I'm just, not having to replace them anything?
We have, that's where we've been replacing plows and wings. I think what we looked at is what we talked about replacing next year was going to be,
It was like 2 wings, so this will
Yeah.
pretty much cover two of the new wings that we'll need.
yeah.
Okay. I'm done.
Any other questions on road maintenance? All right, then. Thank you very much for coming. Where do you want to head next?
Start at the top, 4152.1.
Let's check.
Good night.
Right.
Take care.
This is the lion's share of the budget here is assessing services. 2015 is the time for our revaluation. This budget, we anticipate routine services, so new construction pickups, the sort of the annual adjustments we have outside of that. The contract we have expects about $11,550 for that. The revaluation, the last year of that is the data report and analysis and adjustment of all of the numbers. So the way that this works is it's backloaded that last year with the big cost, the $95,000. So overall, to cover the assessing contract for 2015, we need $106,550. We have the $42,122 from this year's budget carried over. You recall, we try to even fund it, so we carry a little over each year. So we don't have the full hit at the end. We have a balance carried forward from 13 of 10,005. That leaves the amount to be raised for 2015 to be just under $54,000. The thought had been that we would, well, a couple things on this. We started out 5 years ago thinking we could level fund, and then, in fact, we thought we might be able to pick up some space. We didn't pick up some of the space on the routine assessing, and you'll see this year we adjusted downward that budget as we dealt with the default budget situation.
So in 2016,
2016, okay, so 2016, we begin the new five-year cycle.
Start all over again.
You're going to start all over again. So you're going to see, and, I assume the next cycle will be slightly higher, so, we'll be in a 5-year plan, and you'll probably, if you take the same approach we took now, you'll budget 50 grand a year for 5 years, and hopefully be in the ballpark then at 2020 to deal with this again.
is Avatar the only show out there that
No.
does this? Okay, so basically there may be a different firm doing it,
There may be a different firm doing it.
because like anything else, they could compete for the job, and
Yeah, I did, Avatar, with the last time we did put this out to bid in 10, and Avatar was by far the most price competitive. And I'll tell you, to give you a little context too, that it's a funny market, because you can buy the services to go out and measure and list and do all of that and do the reval, but there's there's this linkage to software. You see the next item too. We use their software as well. So sometimes a change in company, if you unbundle it, you end up buying their services and you buy their software.
now what does the software actually do?
That's the software that when you look up a property card, it has all of that information, so it has the measurements, the actual measurements, listings, all of the data that goes into building the assessment.
It also allows the assessor to be able to go into the software, strip out all the valuations, all the variable data, and then generate the state statistics that are needed.
Yeah.
Any other questions on assessing? All right then, moving to personnel administration.
Personnel administration. Couple things happening here. That first line that was called health insurance, that wasn't really health insurance. You may recall the past couple of years, we had returns of surpluses from from Health Trust, the insurance pool we purchased in. We kept some of that money, and some of that money we owed back to our employees and our retirees because it was their money. The major surplus gravy train is past now, so we no longer are budgeting for that. Part of that is most of the settlements that were the bigger numbers that were related to the unraveling of LGC and Health Trust and property liability are done. The other thing is, this past year, we changed providers to another pool, which means we're not eligible for health insurance surplus reimbursement for 2014. The Other notable areas, the retirement lines, 230, 231, 232, those, again, you'll see are going up. And again, that is with a July 1, 2015 change in rate from New Hampshire retirement.
Yeah,
And
is
those
it-
rates are going up.
Is it just the change in rates, Jason?
Well, there's two things. There's a change in rate, and if any of those groups had a wage increase that's baked into this for whatever reason, movement through steps or
That's why-
union
that's why-
contract.
That's why the police are so.
Yeah, that's why you see police, there's two things happening, higher rate and, yeah,
Yeah, so-
yeah, it's both.
So the police retirement reflects the salaries that you have in the budget for the
Right.
police, plus the new rates.
Right.
Okay.
Our unemployment tax has gone down, and this is one of those areas where we received better information after the selectmen originally approved their budget. So you'll see my note there, actual 4481. That is the price we received from our insurer. So obviously, we aimed a little high. The next one, we aimed a little low. You'll see the same thing. We stayed flat at $61,000 for the annual contribution for workers' compensation, and you'll see the note there, actual, our insurer has advised us $66,626. The other reason you see a big jump here is the same thing I talked about surpluses before. Primex was paying us back surpluses as part of their settlement agreement with the state. It gave us kind of a nice little buyout window for a couple years, and we got a lot of money back in 2013, so much that we could carry it into 14. That well is now dry, so most of those with those windfalls being passed, we now have to pay full freight again.
So for these actual numbers on 250 and 260 unemployment tax and the compensation insurance, so we can make a reduction for, I'll say, $2,000 on 250, and then are you expecting a $5,000 increase on 260 to cover the actual? And how are you making up the differentials?
At this point, I'm providing the actual information to you, because the selectmen have already approved, and, we had got, like I said, we got better information since then. So, if you want to consider the real numbers, those are the real numbers.
That's what I want. Thank you.
Yeah.
So is this something, next week when we go through this budget, is this something that you're going to motion to increase to meet what the selectmen have?
I would like to think that the Budget Committee would do that, too. Or recommend that we actually use the actual numbers. But
I would be glad to.
I think we should use the real numbers. I mean, we get the numbers, I think it's been historical. We don't get them until November sometimes.
Yeah.
If it's real, I think we should do it, and
I
it
mean,
should be the
normally-
Budget Committee.
The net is a
Normally wouldn't even
approximate
review this
$3,000 increase
until
to the bottom
Very
line.
last meeting.
Well, and that's why we're doing it this
Then we
way
would've
to
had-
avoid,
had the
Right.
money.
and that's why I wanted to ask how this was going to work next week. All right. Any other questions or comments on personnel? All right, move then to Parks and Recreation. 4520.1.
The notable thing here really is the bottom line of this budget, and this was the way that I had the conversation, the chair of the rec committee, bottom line is within $500 of our adjusted budget this year, and less than what we had originally all proposed last year. So what you'll see is some reallocation of those funds between lines based on largely our experience this year and some expectations we have. I mean, if you're following along on where we've spent and haven't spent here this year, you'll see we've certainly spent more on the building and facility, and we've had some opportunities to take care of buildings and grounds and put more effort there.
Have they started the roof?
It's done and significantly under budget.
We get actual bids when these numbers are put on warrant article, right? Like, you have actual proposals.
We have a construction estimate. We don't bid it. I'm not going to waste everyone's time on a bid for an article that may or may not pass. So, yeah.
Is your question, that do we get bids to get the work assigned, or do we get bids before we go to the budget?
Do we get bids to get the number that goes on the warrant article?
No, to Jason's point, we'll get an estimate.
It's so many months ahead of time.
Understood. I can think back to the town hall roof, right, where that was a warrant article, and that came in half of what the warrant was for.
We'd be happy to look for a more expensive price if you would prefer. But, I mean,
No.
that's the timing issue we have?
I'm
Yeah.
questioning, whether there's any opportunity for this committee to review these estimates that come in to do a sanity check, because this is the second roof that has been in a warrant article that's now significantly under what we've appropriated.
We went to the likely person, the market leader in the area, the company that does the roof. I remember sitting here last year hearing members of this committee said, "Oh, you got a quote from Terrian, that's a good quote."
I don't know who Terry is,
Darian.
Terrian,
whoever.
right.
Wasn't me.
Wasn't me.
I'm sorry we're finding ways to save money. I mean, I hear what you're saying,
But you're not saving money, because now you have, 40,000 in town hall, and some of that was reappropriated to redo the front entrance of the town hall, right? That's extra money that was
It
spent
goes back to the
elsewhere.
fund balance, and the
let-
voters have the choice to, if they want to spend it again a different way.
But it leaves it in a pool, right, that you can encumber for other purposes.
So let's
That's my
talk,
problem.
let's talk this through a moment. If we end up going out and getting a bid, if I go to Chris Bascucci and say, "Chris, December of next year, I want you to bid on this," okay? He's gonna sit there and say, "I don't know how much materials are gonna cost me," right? And he's gonna raise his prices up high. Now, when we get there, maybe the prices are lower, maybe they're higher, or whatever, but I can guarantee you that if I go to him and say, "Chris, will you guarantee this price for a year?" he's not gonna do it.
Mr. Cutter, I do understand where you're coming from.
And I
do
agree with what you're
I
saying.
do understand the point you're saying, and, correct, nobody's gonna guarantee a price for a year, but, for example, if you're going out for a bid, we know it's gonna go to vote in March, and you're asking a bid 2 weeks ago for March, that's more realistic. You can probably get pretty darn close and almost exact, and contractors would pretty much honor that. Maybe they'd want to go 2% higher, just in case, but supplies and material, and you pretty much know that far out. Again, to your point, yeah, they've been coming significantly less, and that's great. So we don't want you to go look for somebody higher and say that's too cheap. But, so having known that, this board does need to ask more questions and understand, and ask those questions when something else comes to warrant like that, and ask, is this a bid or not? Look, I don't think it's wasting any contractor time to get an actual bid. Contractors, they understand, they understand. In my job, I've asked a bid where money had to be approved, and I understand the game, and I also understand if you say, look, we're thinking about doing it next year, of course everybody's gonna go high, because you might even say, look, go high, just cover yourself, or the contract say, I gotta go high. There's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing nefarious with that, but that's the way it is, because you'd rather play it safe, because it always looks better when you come back and say, look, we saved you a ton of money. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we all understand that, that's the question.
My final point on this, right, is, we're sitting here going through budgets, looking at $50 line items, $100 line items, et cetera,
Right.
right? Between these two projects, both talent and town hall, right, you might have had 50 or 60,000 roughly extra above what it cost to actually do the projects themselves, right? That's a lot of extra money that the taxpayers are funding for these projects.
Yeah, but
There's a project that we had to construct the intersection of Albuquerque and Page Road that we ended up almost going, I think we did go over by, what, 10, 15,000? We had to take it out of another line item somewhere. So, it cuts both ways. Yeah, I would like to come in right to the penny if we can do it, but
well, how is the warrant written for the town, the Darapon roof?
was it not to exceed?
Well, no, we have to put an actual number in. What do you mean, how is it written?
Is that money just allocated specifically for the roof? Any money's left over goes into the
Yeah.
national voter?
That's the way it,
No,
No, it's not a special warrant.
it's not a
article.
special warrant article. It's not a special warrant
But if
article.
it was,
If it was, then
it would answer Andrew's question.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we write them as special warrant articles?
A special warrant article still dumps it back into the general fund. Special warrant article would still put it back in the general fund if we appropriate it, right?
Yes,
Right.
So it doesn't answer this question.
well,
Because that's exactly what's happening now, I think, to Andrew's point. What Andrew's making a point of is, we say the cost is, I'm making up numbers now, $50,000. We come in at 25, and he's concerned that we're appropriating an additional $25,000. That $25,000 that's appropriated goes into the general fund.
Although, you are correct that a special article binds you, and any balance is, and that article is for that purpose, and any balance not used for that purpose can't be applied to another purpose.
Right.
A balance unspent in an article that's not a special article could be transferred to a different unrelated purpose. And then that becomes kind of the political judgment that the
Well,
selectmen make.
Well, the whole.
and that's the difference.
The
That is
whole
the-
warrant article can be transferred. For example, if the selectmen wanted to, they could take the money that was budgeted for a purpose and repurpose it.
Not if it was a special warrant article.
If it's not a special warrant
Yeah,
article, yes, you're absolutely right.
That's what I thought the case was, Frank, and I think that's what Andrew's getting at. Because in past, maybe way back, the articles were always special,
Yeah,
allocated for a specific purpose.
I think-
And we knew that this goes way back.
Andrew's point, I think, is that we're over appropriating or coming in too far off of what the true cost of the project is.
That's
I think
right.
that's what his point is.
That's the only point you had?
No, there's quite a few points with my
Yeah,
statement.
thank you.
but-
I didn't
but-
think
but
that
we're-
was your only-
We're also off topic because it's warrant article related, so.
Just like Donovan, you know,
Yeah.
Oglio and Arrow, having many points is like having. no
Connection
point
with
at all.
the building maintenance.
yeah, right.
There's a blast from the past.
All right.
But Andrew did strike a chord with me. Okay.
We're sitting here, going back and forth on $100 items, and this is such a large difference.
But we've gotten away
Doesn't-
from special warrant articles.
Yep.
Okay, we had the same issue come up last year when we did the road one. Remember, you specified certain roads in there.
Informationally,
Which you were
yes.
not bound by.
Right.
If that were a special warrant article, you would, okay.
No, but I would still be bound to spend the money
On roads.
on roads, but that's different, but you're correct.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to Parks and Recreation. So the roof came in under budget.
I'm sorry, it will never happen again.
Well, and, not that anybody would do that, but sometimes I think we beat people down for doing a better job. We need to be careful the message we're sending.
No,
don't think
I
that was the
agree.
message.
You know what, I don't think we do it, it could be interpreted that way. They're not interpreting it that way. Many years ago, I was doing business with a college back in 1992 and selling supplies, and I swear they told me, it's like, I got to spend the money. If I don't spend it, they won't give it to me next time. Bought stuff they didn't need. I mean, that was a turning point for me personally in my business. I said, I don't want to do business like this. But our town doesn't interpret it that way, and I don't think we're sending that message. We appreciate the fact that they're looking for the least expensive way to do something and save the town money. To Andrew's point, we're on the front end now, trying to figure out if there's a better way to handle that.
All right. Any other questions, comments on Parks and Recreation?
Oh, yeah.
Have at it.
Let me go to line 650. Field maintenance. Okay. Year-to-date is 32,000,
Yep.
I believe.
And there is another about $11,000 outstanding for field maintenance bills.
I'll buy that.
Because I look at my notes here, we paid 5 payments of 7. That's the big chunk of that.
Because, I looked at what we'd spent last year, and that was almost 43,000 over here.
Mm-hmm.
And at this same point in time last year, we had spent 36, so we're actually a little behind. except taking into account what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, when,
Which would make me wonder if that isn't just a little bit high, the 43 that you've budgeted.
well, and if it will make everybody feel better based on your previous conversation, the rec committee is expected to open bids for mowing contract next Tuesday night.
Well, we won't be voting on this for a while anyway.
Right, so, but you know, so there's,
So, again, my take is there's probably a little bit of money in there, okay? Just let you know. 730, field improvement capital outlay. Haven't really spent anything this year on it.
you're correct, and can I refer you back to what we've spent on building repair and maintenance? I mean,
No, you can't.
okay, well, I'd like to, because that's the horse trading we do, between those. We spent, on building repair, we spent, I have 4,000 booked so far,
Yeah.
and there's another, looking at what's gone in here, there's probably, there's at least another 1,000 pending.
Yeah.
That's there. So, I mean, we made the trade-off, we're gonna spend the money on building, not grounds.
So there's no need to do work at Dara Pond, the playground, and Jeff Lane.
There's time to do work at all of them. There's limited money, and so that's where we just shifted the dollars this year.
Year before, we spent 1,500.
And how much did we spend on buildings the year before? This is my problem, is we say buildings and grounds, and sometimes we spend it on buildings, sometimes we spend it on grounds.
Actually, I very seldom spend it on the grounds,
Okay.
mostly on buildings.
Well, again, if you feel it's more accurate to move the dollars around, but I ask you, don't look at one line in a vacuum and forget the other
I'm
line.
not going to, I'm going to look at the bottom line, what I'm going to do,
Yeah.
actually. Okay, wages custodian, that was reasonable. 341, never mind, that's zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Propane, the same question I think the other folks had on the town budget.
Is the 169 the price you're using, because the 8,000 is based on $1.95? So which one is correct?
Use the 8,000. The 8,000 is an estimate, and I apologize, I didn't revise my note at $1.69.
All right, and that's what's also used for the road agent then, because $1.95 gives you
Okay,
6,200.
please use the budget number that we did. Sorry about that, that's
Road
my,
agent, 4311,
Yeah.
411. You have propane, gas there, approximately 3,200 gallons, so if at $1.95, you're at 62.40. So is it $1.95 used in both situations, or buying at different places, or?
we're using really bad notes by the town administrator. Please, look, I mean, I got tired of beating up by numbers and gallons, and so I actually just, we picked a flat number based on our
Okay,
expectation.
It's rounded.
Yeah,
That's
right.
perfect.
So yes, unfortunately, you can't back into the number.
It's actually rounded low, because it's 62.40 at $1.95.
My last line is the last one, 831 program expenses, Jason.
Yep.
Right,
Year-to-date, $500.
that's next week.
Mm-hmm.
Year before, little under 1,000.
Yeah, and I expect you'll see, actually, I just talked to Keith Buxton today about charges to that line for preparation for Winterfest, because they hit year-end spending for next spring there, so you'll probably see that line consumed.
But they had Winterfest last year,
Yeah, last year was, the 13 was the first year.
Yeah.
14 was this year, was the second year. So, as they've learned, some of the things if they can acquire and contract them. Now they've done it 2 years, they know a little bit more what they're doing. So that was the conversation I had with Keith today, is that there are some things that they want to lock up and have in place that they know they need this year, so they have it for that, I think it's
February.
early
something.
February. It's like early February, I think.
So this year's actual already included what we spent.
This includes part of what we've spent. They've also paid, this year was a good year in terms of what they brought in, so They charge as little as possible to the budget and charge as much as possible to the funds they make from the event. So,
You said they're opening up the bids for field maintenance next Tuesday, so that means they will have a price locked in next Tuesday night?
no, they'll have a price, assuming that they have multiple bids and they're interested in accepting one of those bids, then they'll open them that night, they'll know what the ballpark is. And then if they're doing their due diligence properly, they would confirm that the bid meets all their specs and then decide at a later meeting, not decide on the fly that night. But we'll know, okay, if the apparent low bidder is 45, that helps you guys with the number. If the apparent low bidder is 75, you got to know that too.
Anything else?
All right, that is tonight's review. So what we need to do now is move on to voting. Starting with 4191.1 Planning Board. Are there any motions to?
Line 392, the planner, I'll make a motion to lessen that by just $1,000. Make that line 18,320.
There is a motion to make line 392, 18,320. There's a second? Any discussion?
We spoke about that last week.
If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor of changing line 392, planner, in NRPC planner, to $18,320, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? So it's 7-2, the motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion on 329, recording fees, zeroing that out from $50 to zero.
A motion has been made on 329 recording fees to zero that out, which reduces it by $50. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Per last week, this was clearly never spent.
If there is no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing 329 recording fees by $50 to zero, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That is 7-2 passes.
I'd like to make a motion on 625 postage and reduce it by $100, so it'll be $250.
All right, line 625 postage is being reduced by $100 to stand at $50. Is there a second?
Second.
There's,
Trend
a
here.
motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion?
Does that interact with what they've been running?
Yeah, they've spent $3, and per our discussion last week, they've never exceeded, ever. $50.
All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing 625 postage to $50, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstain? The motion passes 7-2.
I'm done.
Are there any more lines?
Yeah.
All right, are there any other motions? All right, so that is a reduction of $1,150 from planning, 419110 planning. All right, moving then to zoning, 4191.3. Are there any changes to this one?
I'd like to make a motion to, on the 811 seminars. I'd like to reduce that by $70.
Motion is to reduce 811 seminars to $70?
To $100.
To, excuse me, to $100.
Yeah. Reduction of $70.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Reason,
I'm sorry?
the reason?
Again, never spent.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing 811 seminars to $100, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
No, 7.
Excuse me, 7-2.
They're all gonna be 7-2,
I had the
it
7
seems.
correct.
It doesn't really matter, you're doing the bottom line after it, so
Yeah,
that's when it's gonna matter.
Okay.
Any,
Just wondering.
any further
I mean, I
changes?
Bill's even said, he goes,
I
he
know
doesn't
what-
care, he's just waiting for the
I know
bottom
why,
line.
I know why Mr. Bauer votes no.
Yeah. Is
You
the,
Why?
You have to.
No, I
You
don't,
go into the will of the board.
don't have to do anything.
all right.
Okay.
Are there any further reductions on zoning? Okay, that is a reduction of $70 to $4191.30. Moving to general governmental facilities. Are there any changes to this?
Really?
Anybody?
Bueller?
I want to look at 635 gasoline. I know that, well, all right, let's. I make a motion to reduce 635 gasoline by $3,000 to $53,440.
Second.
You're making that
$3,000 reduction.
$3,053,440.
Yeah, and I think that still leaves a generous amount. I know Frank sent around some information on gasoline futures. That was a month old at the time, and I think that was good information at the time. But I know just what's been in the paper in the last couple of days, the 25% reduction by the Saudis, the other analysis of all the other things that go into what gas prices may be. They seem to feel that this is going to last longer than some of the previous reductions. So that sounded like we could take a little bit off the top here.
$3,000 out of a line for what?
It was 56,440, and I'm reducing it to 53,440.
Now,
There are other reports out there too, Cindy. Moody's put one out that says way down on the,
And-
so that's fine.
And I looked and I said, okay, at $3 a gallon, that's $48,000. So I tried to leave room there.
I believe gas is gonna go down also. I mean, the other stuff.
Can I get a tape of this? I want to hear this.
Well, I'm gonna, no, obviously, this is always a shot in the dark, but, you know, Cindy said other things, you mentioned.
Yeah,
Some of the other things that I'm thinking now is we had an election the other day, and, you know, and that's what I,
And the Republicans are all big oil people, and
that's it. They're all taking
therefore the cost will come right down.
They're taking the kickbacks, you were talking the pipeline now, it's a whole different story, so there is some optimism out there that gas is not
Do
gonna
you
go.
think the pipeline will be complete next year, Mr.
You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You see it's going down. Today I just paid
The flow of the oil without it being done.
287 or something I just paid today, when a month and a half ago I was paying 365.
I mean, that reduction brings the cost per gallon on this at what, 320, and that's less
That's-
state taxes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
there's still a lot of room, I
And
think,
I
in
think
there.
Cindy's motion was very generous, actually.
I do too. I was
I will
tr-
tell you
good for
that
now.
that in December when we do bottom line, I'm gonna come up with a new number.
Yeah, but we're bottom line, right? I'm opening it.
Seriously,
But I-
Back in 2009, gas was actually under $2. And if you look at the trend, We had an artificially high spike, it's been really the highest, and the rest of it, it's been trending down.
When I was a kid, you used to get it 30 cents a gallon.
25.
25.
When I was a kid.
Man, you're old.
You're older than me, you must have been paying more.
All right.
I remember 99 cents.
Any other discussion on line 635, reduction by $3,000? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? 7-3, the motion passes.
Yeah, the next release
Wait,
date
wasn't it
on the
7-2?
oil futures was November 12th, so we'll get a good look at it before.
I'm sorry, my brain has already moved on. 7-2, the motion passes. All right, any other changes, reductions?
Item 411, why such a spike in propane?
Because we under budgeted this past year.
But you're at 6103 now,
Mm-hmm.
with what, maybe one fill-up to go?
With probably two more fill-ups to go. Last January, or this past January, we spent $2,000. So, yeah, so I'm looking at, we're low. We have not filled this since we've had one partial in October, and then we haven't done anything since May. So we're ready for winter this year, so I'm figuring that we're gonna spend some more.
You partially fill tanks?
Yeah, I had a small, yeah, I'm looking here that, we had one invoice here for 233 on October 10th. Our normal run is about $1,000 a fill.
They filled the tank, you just didn't need to be filled very much.
Right. They must have
I see. I see.
Yeah, sorry, language. Yeah, they came out and just was, because I
was to cap it off.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers we spend, and it's $1,000 each time. Then I got this little $200 charge in October. So,
This is always a tough one for me. We had a year or so ago, I think we upset Jason because we didn't mean for him to go out and measure how much is in tanks. But it's important. For example, how this number could be skewed. For example, if they were running on empty all through last year, January 2nd, tank was empty, they filled up. And then if they run out on December 28th, and then on December 29th, they fill up. So in 2014, it seems like you're using a lot more gas, but you're really not. Okay, it's just where it was charged, because they're not on meters. Obviously, if we had one central gas tank or on meters, you could see how much each facility used, and you'd get an accurate reading on what they use. So this is not how much they use at each location, this is how much they fill. That's why some years might seem higher than others.
Everything filled is used.
No, it's not. It's used in a different year that you appropriated for. It could be, is what I'm getting at.
But it's paid for in the
There's
project.
old gas in that tank at the bottom.
Okay, you understand where I'm coming from. I know you do.
And
Right.
two observations. One, we aimed a little high. I mean, we trended high. This year was cold. We had cold early this year,
We
like
certainly
particularly cold. Colder than the past. So
Global cooling.
so the history was a little tricky for us. Right now, we're supposed to have more polar vortex. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe we're $1,000 in the wrong direction. I can also assure you that you're right about timing, but I got a lot better things to do at the end of the fiscal year than figure out how to game my gas budget.
I agree, but the way we, obviously, I know, Mr. Cutter, you're great at this, and something like this, you could look at the averages, take how many, fillings over 3 years, and then you could average out how much you use in a year, and that's.
We don't have that data, all we have is dollars.
Right, but you could translate that.
How?
So, what do you want to do, Chris?
How do I know my?
No, I
cost
don't want
per
to do
gallon?
anything, I'm just explaining the question Mr. Valencourt asked.
I'm gonna make a motion to cut it down $1,000 to $8,600.
Okay, and that is 411 propane.
Yes.
There's a motion to reduce that line by $1,000. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
I look at what they spent now. He said he just filled up earlier or mid-October, 6,600 now. Or no, I'm sorry, 66. You're at 6,100 now. I think it's still good. I think it's a good number.
So you're at 6,100, you're gonna fill up, obviously, you're gonna have to fill up again before the end of the year.
One more time.
I'm probably going to fill up twice.
How big is the tank?
The largest fill we got last year was about 700 gallons.
Yeah, it's probably 1,000, yeah, I'd say.
Which means they fill up 800 gallons, so so you're gonna.
$8,100
$800.
for 2 more fill-ups
There you
from
go.
where you are now. I'm proposing 86.
Mhm.
I think you're still safe.
Okay, right, if you fill up twice, you're gonna fill up, let's say, end of November, again, the end of December, which you'll pay for in this year, will get you through, all through January, February.
End of January.
That seems,
ask.
that seems reasonable.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Jason, what's the price per gallon that you're paying at the town?
169 or 195.
It had been
Right?
it had been 169.
Well, it says it on some lines, it doesn't say it on this one.
I'll let you know next week. My detail notes here just have the gallons I'm putting in. I'm not listing price on it, so.
Yeah, because based on.
Is gas a contract price through the town? I mean, through municipalities?
No, I mean,
Like-
we have an agreement with Energy North for a fixed price, sort of a shared purchase price, so.
Even
I was gonna say, even if it's $1.95, it's still really close, it's 87.75, so reducing it to 86 is still in the ballpark. So even using the higher price of one of the previous lines. Any further discussion on 411? All right, hearing no more, all those in favor of reducing line 411 propane gas by $1,000 to $8,600, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-3.
I know nothing to research.
We're heading in the right direction, guys.
I've seen a few more come this way.
There's a trend.
We'll win one.
There's a trend.
The way to really address this variability question is like Jason does, in that he'll juggle between lines when he has problems. So the way to address this is to look at the bottom line of this budget and say, here's the number, you're within it. And that's what I think we're going to wind up doing in December when we vote the budgets.
That may be what we're doing, I mean, that will be what we're doing, but it helps to see where those reductions
Well,
come
I
from.
agree with you, and honestly, all I'm looking for right now is where are the things that look like they might be soft one way or the other. So I have a feeling what I would like to do with bottom line.
Mhm.
And then if I make that motion, I'll have a feel for where those numbers would come from. But I won't go in individual lines and say, change this one, change that one, change that one. Then we get really bogged down. I still think gasoline is high.
All right, anything more for general government buildings? All right, the total reductions on this were $4,000. Moving to cemeteries, $41.95. Any changes?
I'd like to make a motion on line 650 to reduce it by $665, which will set it at 7,000.
Okay, there's a motion to reduce 10,650 to $7,000.
Second?
Is that a second?
It's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Reason?
Again, per our discussions last week, this is high. I
Any-
could probably even go lower on this one.
Any further discussion?
Next December.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing line 650 groundskeeping by $665, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes
I know,
7-2.
I'll get you back.
So the baseline's 2, so you gotta work from 2. There's always gonna be 2 no's.
Any further changes to 4195 cemeteries? Okay, so the total reduction to that is $665. Moving to ambulance, 4215.1. Anything there? Hearing nothing, moving on to 4220.1 fire department. Are there any changes here?
Fire department. For line 120, I'd like to move a $5,000 reduction.
There's a motion to reduce line 120 fire department wages, call firefighters by $5,000. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Can you give us a reason why?
Yeah, we had a discussion about this last week, if you recall, and, we talked about where we think this is actually going to fall, and quite frankly, I think it's just high, based upon what you're planning on spending.
What number of calls you anticipating that will happen in 2015?
I have no idea. Couldn't forecast it. Why don't you tell me?
But the fact.
550.
Perfect.
The fact is, what you proposed, Andrew, is more than they spent last year, and well more than they're gonna spend this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, based on averages, the average is 72.5, so it's well within at least the average from the last couple of years.
And I'm guessing you could still have the same amount of calls, but from what I also understand, you don't average the 6 firefighters per call, and that's probably the difference. So you might have the 550.
But there are so many assumptions and moving parts, because you're right, because you may not have the 550, sometimes you have 6, and that assumes that you have people for, you get a long call, well, then 3 people, and, yeah, so.
It's a guess.
It is, and it's the nature of what incidents you have that year. You can use it all, or you can be lucky and use a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of reducing line 120 call firefighters by $5,000 to $72,264, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So the motion passes 7-2, a reduction of $5,000. Are there any other changes?
On line 140, remind me again what our discussion, I'm actually trying to recall our discussion last week on the overtime.
That was a function of calls also, if I remember.
Yeah, that was a guess, too.
Yeah.
Right, it depends how long the chief, is it how long he stays on a call, or how long a call lasts? Is that what that was for?
No, that's for our 2 full-timers.
I'm sorry, that's right, the captain, not the chief, I'm sorry.
So again, it's a variable on when the calls come, how long they stay, what service they have. If you have a long call, your full-timers are gonna be there, so.
Or what time the calls come in.
Yeah,
We had that way down.
We've been lucky this year.
Well, last year, we were around 9,000. This year, my notes say we're 6,447 year-to-date. In my notes, I thought that we could do with the $1,000 reduction there.
That's what I was thinking too. I will make a motion.
Okay, well, there's a motion to reduce line 140, fire department overtime by $1,000 to $9,814. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of reducing line 140 firefighter overtime by $1,000 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
7-2, it passes. Okay, Andrew, there's one more.
That's actually the last one I had.
All right.
I was gonna make one point of discussion before any other motions.
Mhm.
Is we also had the discussion of these, the cameras, right?
Yes.
Thermal imaging cameras?
The imaging
Yes.
cameras. I don't have the town budget in front of me. What line was that under? I forgot.
740?
740, thank you.
I wasn't here last week for that discussion, and I asked Frank when I came in, because I didn't know we had 2. I remember having one, and there was
Actually-
one, maybe we had one and there was one
We have
donated.
3.
3?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is 3.
And one is a 1990s
There it
vintage
is.
model.
There it is. There, and
I know we have one donated and we have one destroyed, so I don't know where the 3 come from. Not in my memory, but.
The discussion we had last week was, several of us went on a tour and actually got to see the equipment in action, and the concern was that one was not enough. That we really, and then the chief agreed that having 2 new ones at a time rather than one every year would certainly be better, because when you rest them, the chargers, to have at least one other that could be charged and use the same charger. I forget some of the other details that he shared with us. So.
Since that time, the chief has suggested that he would prefer to get 1, not 2.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. That makes it easy.
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, go right
I
ahead.
wasn't planning on it, but, training wages, 127.
Yep,
I'd like to reduce that by $2,000 to $45,175.
okay, there is a motion to reduce 127 training wages by $2,000 to $45,175. Is there a second?
Second.
My rationale is, the budget, as I see it, is built as a best we can do with all our force. But when I go back and look at last year's, when we built the budget that way, they didn't spend it all. When I look at what's in the budget this year, it's pretty clear they're not going to spend what they had budgeted. So this is one of the ones where, for whatever reason, either people aren't available or what happens, they don't get to do everything they want to do, and that's been a track record the last couple of years. So I'm saying that that $2,000 reduction is probably conservative.
Yeah, I had a note of a $5,000 reduction.
Go to it, kid.
Just based on year-to-date, they've spent $36,000, and last year, they spent $36,000 in total. So, as when I looked at it, $42,000 still seemed to be pretty reasonable, considering this year and last year.
Yeah, I'd accept an amendment if you want, Cindy. This, right off the top of my head tonight, okay?
First off, we don't have a second, I don't believe, do we?
Yeah.
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 Oh,
I
yeah,
did.
we do. I wouldn't have started talking until we had it, Frank.
A discussion. Yeah, I will make a motion,
Amend the motion.
amendment to the motion to reduce that further to a $5,000 reduction.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, this decreasing training for firefighters is kind of a bad idea. You end up in a situation where you have firefighters who do not have the skills necessary or have their skills exercised to be able to do their jobs. And I don't think it's in keeping with what the citizens of Litchfield would want to have happen in terms of having people who are qualified provide their medical services as well as their fire prevention services.
I think the reduction in training that a fire department gets would be terrible, too. What I'm looking at is what we have spent on average. So, I mean, unless we've got new, untrained people that for whatever reason we need to do a lot of catching up next year, I think that, 42,000 is still a reasonable number to get everybody trained.
Now, I agree. A firefighter should be trained. They should get the education they need. So if every year we hear the same thing, and I know it's not intentional, but the intent is to train them all and use all the money, but it never seems to work out that way. So unless we know it's going to be used, which it usually isn't, then I guess I'd be okay with reducing it a little bit too. But I'm not saying that we should not be training our firefighters. I'm just saying we're obviously not doing it to what is usually listed on this page.
So just to give the committee a little bit more facts, right? In 2013, we spent $36,700 and budgeted $47,000. So there's a $10,000 difference there. And we spent $36,000 this year. Again, my numbers are as of 9/30,
Year-to-date, my notes say that we were told last week we're at 36,000.
36,000 this year.
33, the last number I had was 33,847 for this year. And last year, the same point in time, it was 32,743. And we spent 36 last year. 37.
And we're at 36 this year so far.
No, we're at
And a 5,000 would make it 42,000, right? 175.
Mhm.
Yep, 42,175, yeah.
36,140.
Yeah. The last one I had was 32.
Which, just saying, if this passes, that's $11,000, that's almost a camera.
You know, but again, it's on the bottom line here.
Mhm.
Back to, the discussion we had, we got a bottom line budget of how much?
$500,000.
$500,000? And there are gives and takes within it. And
But even with what we're doing now, they still get the same give and take
All
throughout
right,
lines.
back to the amendment. Are there any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment reducing line 127, training wages to $5,000, please signify by saying aye.
By $5,000.
If you're taking
not
it to
two.
Right,
$5,000.
changing the reduction to $5,000.
The 42,170.
To
Okay.
42,175.
Got it.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Any opposed? Okay, 7-2, the amendment passes. Now, the main motion, which is
The amendment.
the reduction of line 127 by $5,000 to 42,175. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
We voted on the amendment and then we actually.
So the main motion passes 7-2. Any further changes?
What did we spend on vehicle fuel last year?
I have 10,280 in my notes.
Say again?
I have 10,280 in my
Last
notes
year?
last year, yeah.
Diesel fuel really hasn't seen the same decrease yet as far as gasoline.
It has not, correct. It's only gone down a couple pennies.
Yeah.
What did we spend, the last number I had on
That'd be a
year-to-date
lot.
was, last time I had year-to-date was 4,077, is that gone up?
I don't have
Say
that
again?
number.
Year-to-date for the fuel,
And that is what item?
There's a reason why diesel fuel hasn't gone down.
635,
635?
635 to date is 4,076.
okay. For this year then, 4,077? And that's on a call much lower this year than last year.
Last invoice that went through was in August. So we may be on a delay billing here, so.
Yeah, all I'm thinking, Jason, there's got to be a correlation between the call firefighter wages that we budget versus the fuel. I mean, the calls.
The wages and the fuel?
If you have fewer calls and you're running
Fewer
as
calls,
frequently, the
fewer
trucks
fuel.
aren't running as much, and
Correlation, I mean, that's all I'm saying, right? And we budgeted basically the same as 2013, so maybe this isn't a bad number. I'm working with you, buddy.
There's also a correlation between storks and babies. That's where that whole thing came from, actually, believe it or not.
But diesel fuel has gone down a little
Little
bit.
tidbit for the day.
There we go.
Hey,
Correlation does not causation.
Be lucky to spend 6,000 this year.
Are there the same amount of taxes on diesel fuel as there is gas fuel, or is it taxed differently?
No, state taxes. Same thing, isn't it?
State taxes, but I'm not sure what the state taxes are.
So it is different than the...
It is
than the
taxed, though. No question.
Regular gas.
Well, there's
We are obligated to use the highway fuel. There's two types of fuel.
Yeah.
There's number 2 fuel oil, and then there's the highway fuel. One of them's dyed, I forget which way.
I was gonna say they're dyed a different color because they're road tax in it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that way they can look in your tank, and if you're using number 2 heating fuel, you're in trouble.
Right.
You get arrested, actually.
A good HLN story, right?
But you can run it in a tractor.
Oh,
all right, anything further
want
for the fire department budget? All right, hearing nothing, then the total reduction is $11,000 for 4220.10 fire. All right, we'll move on to fire hydrants.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 412, the only line in this budget, by $4,017.12.
12 cents, okay. For a motion to reduce 412 fire hydrants by a reduction of $4,017.12 to $295,308. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, you said 29,000?
295,308.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is just setting to actual based upon what the town administrator provided us.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of...
I'm sorry, is that correct, Jason?
That is correct.
That's
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All those in favor of line 412 fire hydrants, reduction of $4,017.12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes.
He's programmed.
That's an easy one.
I'm waiting for the bottom line. It's just easier to say no.
Andrew made it, I think Chris seconded it?
No.
I second.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Carrie seconded it.
You're a tough sell.
All right. Moving on to code enforcement, 4241.20. Any changes here? Nothing? All right, that one stays the same. Moving to 4290.10, emergency management. Any changes here? Hearing nothing. This was one, well, this may be something for end of the year. The discussion was, the reason for the increase is traditionally half has been paid out of the end of the year encumbrances. So they are not budgeting it that way this year, but that's something we may want to take up when we do our final, budget approval. Moving on to health, 4411.10. Any changes here? Hearing none. Moving on to Conservation Commission, 4611. Any changes here?
Let me get to it.
4611. Nothing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Line 430, I'd like to move that to $750.
Alrighty, there is a motion to increase line 430, property management, to $750. Is there a second?
Second.
Had this discussion last week, when the voters approved changing the conservation fund,
Driving me crazy.
I don't think it was personally, I don't think it was the intent of the voters that all of the conservation costs ought to wind up in that fund. We made the suggestion because of the milfoil as a major expenditure, as a reasonable thing to take out of that particular fund. To take something like the property management, and next line, the dollar for wildlife sanctuary, I think that belongs in the budget. I think the people ought to see it there and know what the conservation is doing, rather than burying it into a fund that was really specifically set up to buy land for conservation purposes.
And the wildlife sanctuary, that's actually gone. That was there's a house on that property now.
We can go 0-0 with that, which it is already. But, Mr. Byron suggested if I didn't like it to make this motion, so that's why I made the motion.
Okay, just to make you aware, the property you're talking about is not property that's bought by the town, that was property taken over by the state, given to the town to manage. So it's got nothing
Frank,
to...
I was talking about the use of the conservation fund to buy land.
You're talking property management fund, you said it's 430, right?
430.
Mm-hmm.
That money is being used to manage the Moores Falls property.
I understand that.
Which is totally something different than the money being used to purchase property.
It's the same, it's coming, it isn't.
No.
So this money isn't going to come out of the fund that was set up?
Yes, yes. Right, I mean, we took it out, your interpretation is correct. I think you guys are all just on crossed wires here.
It happens all the time.
And why I'm agreeing with you, have the minutes reflect that. We took and are funding out of, now the conservation fund is broader than just land purchase. Yes, you are correct. This year, and what is proposed is the property management would come out of that conservation fund rather than out of the operating budget. So what you're suggesting is basically keep using the conservation fund for property purchase and the bigger ticket items like the milfoil, that sort of
And
thing.
I think that was the intent when that article was put forward. So I just, again, the Byron suggests I make the motion, put it back in, so I made the motion. I think it belongs in the budget.
I just want to understand it because I don't truly understand what's going on here. And so if it is, I believe we need to follow the intent of the voter. So if, like Mr. Spencer said, the intent, so the voters weren't deceived. If the intent was to just do the milfoil, then this money should be back in the budget and should be, okay, so.
Well,
But I need to
I think they're
understand.
gonna manage the milfoil out of the conservation fund, which is something I spoke against strongly, because the money that went into the conservation fund mostly came from change of use tax. So when people sold the property, they pay a tax. And the Conservation Commission was getting that money into the bank to buy pieces of land for conservation purposes. The purpose of that, we've altered that at town meeting so that we could pay for other things out of there. But reducing the budget to zero and taking everything out of there isn't the right approach. I don't think that represents the will of the voters.
The voters approved to set this fund up. In the past, it was set up basically as a land purchase fund. It was moved under a state law, which is called the Conservation Fund, and the town voted that. In the law, it clearly says that the monies can be used for any purposes of this chapter, which is the whole chapter of Conservation Commission. Their property management and everything else can come right out of that fund.
Not disagreeing with that at all.
Okay, it can, but let me get, now, I understand the milfoil issue, but that's an old issue now. You might have disagreed. I personally agreed it should be, come out of the fund, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about $750 for other property management.
They're using the $750 for the maintenance and upkeep of the property that's at Moore's Falls. That's the property to the northern part of town. Yes, that's what that $750 is.
The 430 line, this line, I beg to differ with you, was for all the property management they did across all the town of
The only
conservation
property
properties.
management they're doing is Moore's Falls.
So, can we,
Moore's Falls is the property to the
Off of
north of the
380.
town. So the money is
Along the
going to be
river.
used for the maintenance of that property. That's all I'm saying.
Just to close the other end of that, it was always a worry of the Conservation Commission, and all the years I spent there, and I'm certainly sure you remember that as well, that if that fund was ever turned over so that they could just spend it on anything, they would. And this is exactly what's gonna happen. So I think we ought to leave them a little money in there to manage the property, take the milfoil out of that, but all the rest of the purchases, they should come and be in the budget, not out of the money that's set aside, because that money's not coming back ever. Those properties have been sold, that tax has been collected, the town of Litchfield will never get that money back in that reserve again.
well, let me ask this.
Just saying.
What was the wording of the warrant article last
The
year?
wording of the warrant article was to
Change the
codify
language.
the fund under the state laws.
For all purposes,
all
all
purposes.
purposes allowed under state law.
There's no doubt what they proposed is allowable.
It-
Okay,
it's-
was it a special warrant article?
No, there's no money, so
It's-
unfortunately, that doesn't apply.
Because that's my
There was
concern.
no
If
money
If there was a
appropriated.
warrant article that was passed, are we obligated to go by what that warrant article specified?
No, in this case, the warrant article just said up to and including the full spectrum of what's allowed by law, and then it becomes the judgment call between everybody else, what's in, what's out. And we had some pretty robust discussions back and forth, and, we had discussions at selectmen's meetings about could this entire budget get charged to the fund? The Conservation Commission had some reservations about the property management piece
Well, I'm sure they.
coming
they
out
don't- they
too.
don't like
So it's been, whatever direction you go complies with the law.
Okay.
It's the judgment
Will
call,
and
how do you
intent.
want to use all those funds?
Well, I just wanted to make sure where it was a warrant article that people voted for, that we were doing whatever it specifically said.
Voted in 2 or 3 actually more than that, warrant articles to put this money away, including converting the tax all the way over to 100% going into the Conservation Land Trust. Because people that are a little forward-thinking understand that you're not going to reinvent any more land. You're not going to reinvent that income. Once it's consumed, it's gone.
All right.
It
So,
sounds like my 2 cents, but it sounds like the committee, most of the committee's in favor of this motion. I will not support it, because I'm looking to the Conservation Commission to manage the budget. If this wasn't in the budget that they proposed, why? Well,
You're saying they proposed this budget? Jason proposed this budget, Selectmen proposed it.
Selectmen.
Then who is?
You asked the Conservation Commission.
Who is
and
the
I
body of
guarantee-
the Conservation Commission?
I can guarantee you the Conservation Commission wouldn't support this.
Well, where are they?
How do I know any
Oh,
different?
come on.
Look, to be fair to the Conservation Commission, their request would have been the full budget. And
Aren't they sitting
Thank
on
you.
like $1 million?
no,
in there?
they spent a good chunk of it on acquisition this year. That fund's about $360,000. So, and they drew down for milfoil. So that fund is on its way down. We had a little bit of back and forth. My expectation would be that, and I've had a couple members say that, that they would at least entertain the notion of making the proposal down the road to bring that 750 back
At deliberative session.
at deliberative session. So this is not, that is fair. There was a little bit of pushback from me on this too, so.
Yeah, they don't support it.
So the
Right.
governing body then chose to remove it, despite what the Conservation Committee recommended.
Which is, they're right to do, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Just let me
well,
try to
so
understand.
did you say the reason why what was the reason why the Board of Selectmen, the conversation you had why you chose to take
Yeah, I
it
know,
out?
huh? What'd you do?
Because it was felt by the Board of
And you're trying to give
Selectmen
it back.
that the money should be taken from the Conservation Fund. There's other appropriations that go through that Conservation Fund as well, and some of those appropriations are for legal expenses. The Conservation Commission wanted the Board of Selectmen to pay legal expenses for the purchase of the property they just did. Makes no sense. So we said, if you're
Just
gonna
like
manage the
consulting
property, okay, put it, out of that- excuse me, put it out of that fund. Okay? Now, just to reference you, 36A:5, which is the whole RSA where we did this, it says, "Money may be expended from said fund by the Conservation Commission for the purposes of this chapter without further approval of town meeting."
That is
So
it.
they can spend money on any purpose that's authorized for the Conservation Commission without even going to town meeting.
Now, I agree with you, what you're saying, they can, and they're allowed to, and that's the reason why, let me get to the intent. So the selectmen believe that the intent when it was brought to the voters was clear?
There was a discussion by the Select Board that we should take and zero out the whole conservation budget, because under the law, which I just read you, it says that they can spend the money from the Conservation Fund. That motion was debated and discussed, and we ended up with the decision that we would take the property management fee and zero it out, because that should be part of what the Conservation Commission's purpose is in terms of managing the properties, and it should come out of the funds to do that. It was the same logic that we used when we said that they should be using those funds, the conservation funds, for the milfoil weed eradication. It's property management.
And I see Mr. Spencer's point. His is about intent. I guess nobody here is arguing whether it's allowed, because that's all true, it is. And this does fall, in my opinion, under the category of what, like the milfoil, it's property management. So it's milfoil, or it might be something similar to milfoil up on Morse Falls that has to be taken care of. So I guess if you believe the milfoil fell under that, this would too. However, we just need to, I don't remember the warrant and what the intent was. If everybody that voted for that truly believed it was only for the milfoil, I don't know.
They would have to be mind readers.
You're
because
right.
Nowhere does it say milfoil in that article.
It didn't
but
say
that was the
milfoil.
Not at
discussion.
all.
But that was the discussion at town meeting. That was what was presented.
Yeah, I don't know how to vote on this one, quite honestly.
One more fact for the committee. 14, obviously nothing was budgeted and nothing was spent. We've seen other lines where there was expenses against, nothing budgeted, so.
Right, because
Right.
we
Because they're going
started this
against that
discussion
fund.
in March and took it out, so, yeah.
Right, nothing was spent in 13. $50 was spent in 12. Like, it's never been used. Oh, man, I see maybe back in '07.
Now, speaking of they do go up there and they do rent some stuff, and they do rent equipment, and they hog the area out for
But it's been many
brush and
years.
stuff like that.
Well, and,
Oh, they've done it. I mean, I go walking
Unless it's
down
in
there,
different
so-
lines that I don't see. I don't.
well, there have been, at least one of the years, it piggybacked with when we rented the brush hog that we were talking about, the road agent earlier.
Right.
Now, I did not artificially divide again, I'm being penalized because I didn't artificially divide the budget. I used the theory, hey, it's one bottom line, I'm not gonna take this number of hours that Jack used at this number of hours, so it has been used that way in the past.
And charge to the road department, which is reasonable. I mean, if you got the thing for a week, they say, hey, I need it for 6
Right.
hours up there, you grab it, you use it.
Right.
So you're not gonna take 6 hours worth of that value and put it in here.
Right,
That makes total sense.
You rent a piece of equipment for a day or something, or 2 days, or whatever.
right. Yeah, so I didn't allocate it out, so, but those are the types of things that we would look at.
I think the intention, the town of Litchfield has always supported the Conservation Commission. They have a meager budget, they spend it wisely, they've been sitting on that money that's been entrusted to them for a very long time, and without spending it, willy-nilly. I think it's important to continue to support them.
And I never said otherwise.
Right, and can I ask this question? Now let's assume this whole entire committee agrees it should be in the budget. Is $750 the right number based upon what you said?
No.
Well, but I know, the motion is to put 750 in.
Okay.
So now the question is, assuming, which I don't know everybody, assuming we agree it all should be in the budget, is $100 the number? Is it 150?
And the way I would answer that is, if we get a number in there, we can get a number from the Conservation Committee. And the next time we go, when we do a bottom line, we can change this number.
All right, so there's a motion on the table for an addition of $750 to the property management line 430.
Look, I'll make a motion to amend, right? I don't know what the number is. I know based upon past years, it's been very low, right? So I'll make a motion to amend this to $100.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to amend line 430 to $100.
I'll speak to that. I'm going to go back and read the warrant. I believe the intent of the voter is important, and I want to see what it was listed to. If the vote is, if I believe they just meant for the milfoil, although I agree that this legally should be in there, but I just want to make sure the voter's intent is in there, then to me, it's more about the number. And I'll vote for Mr. Cutter's number, and if the Conservation Commission comes back with something different, we'll invite them if they want to come next meeting, and we can discuss it.
All right, so there's an amendment to make line 430 $100 instead of $750. All those,
Which is an increase to the line of $100.
which is an increase to the line of $100. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so the amendment passes 7-2.
It's the opposite way.
So the,
You guys are spendthrifts.
so now the main motion is that line stands at a $100, which is an increase over zero. Any further discussion? All those in favor of line 430 being $100 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 7-2. So that is an increase of $100 to the Conservation Commission.
Whoever thought a $1,408 budget would take that much time, right?
It's about $100 to take that long.
All right, so
Amazing.
next week, we
Worth it.
we vote on this week's, and we have our last set of accounts that we review. Moving on then to member input in new business.
I guess as usual, I have something to say. Again, I want to give some credit, because I guess I don't do that enough. I was talking to, again, some people, and I want to bring up the fact that I think the budget overall, this town budget, in the way they went about preparing it, I watched it, although it didn't start from zero and work its way up. They did start from the last year's default, and it was, in my opinion, a great start, the way they started with it, and they said, I remember that conversation, I was watching it on TV, that's what the voters told them, and they started from there and worked from there, and that's, that's appreciated, and I think the end result shows, and we've been having valuable conversations between the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen over years, and get to know individuals and their concerns, and I think there's been some good, people working together and trying to fine-tune the numbers, and I think we're getting there. So overall, it seems like we're just fine-tuning certain things, which is good. There's no major things we're going through. Part of, I explained, I'm an open book, I explain how I come with my ideas and what my philosophies are, and I saw the, part of what how I base some of my decisions on, not all, is voting, and, the voters the past 2 years have said no, and I try and determine what parts of the budget did they not like, and I'm not a mind reader, so I can just go by my own beliefs and talking to people. But I also go by the other elections, the higher-ups, which we just had the other day, and I got the results here, and although New Hampshire is still clearly probably left of center as a whole, politically speaking, Litchfield is considerably right of center, if you look at who they voted for and the beliefs of the people they were voting for. Some of the candidates, like a representative in Congress, every time she was interviewed, all she ever said was, I'm going to Congress, or want to go to Congress to reduce the size and scope of government. And that's the way even the governor was talking, and those people were overwhelmingly voted in Litchfield, even though they lost on a national level. I'm sorry, on a state level. So, yeah, that does have some play with me, too. I think the people in Litchfield are strong fiscal conservatives, and they believe and understand that they need to spend money to get the valuable, needed town services. And anything over and above is nice to have, and, but needs some serious justification. And what we're doing here is helping and hopefully aiding them with that justification just by the very act of the conversations we're having here. Even though if we get nowhere at the end of the conversation, I think just by having the discussion, if somebody's watching, means a lot and explains a lot. That's all I had to say.
All right, anything else?
Just a summary on the last couple of weeks of our voting. With last week's reductions of 15,650 and this week's reductions of 20,802.12. We're at 36,452.12 some, and that leaves a delta of $197,193.80, which is an increase over year, so from default to present.
196,000 so far.
197.
197,000. Thank you for keeping track of that. I count on you.
And that's an increase over the
That's an increase from,
last year's budget?
well, that's an
Oh, current
increase,
budget.
right,
Including the warrant articles?
no.
No.
And that's tax rate is tax rate. So it's really, you have to include the warrant articles.
That's the budget.
Any other, Frank?
The warrant article was voted on last year was, quote, "To see if the town will vote to rename the fund," which has been in the past referred to interchangeably as the Town Conservation Fund, the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund, and the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund, to Conservation Fund, and to confirm that this fund may be used for the purposes authorized for conservation funds under RSA 36:A.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's what the warrant article.
yeah.
all right.
I'm looking on Google Docs, trying to read the previous town reports that are archived. I'd just like to go on record saying these are pieces of crap. You can't read them.
I'll put it to you this way, I was just in the town reports as you guys were talking on stuff, and I have no problem.
2011?
Yeah, I was looking at 2011, as a matter of fact, and I looked at 2013 as well.
That's it, he took it all. He left you with nothing.
Yeah, I guess.
You got it.
He took
Isn't that
all
how the internet
all the
works? If
juice.
one person's on it, the other guy can't
We need to
get
talk
on
about
it?
how the internet works.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not a series of tubes.
I was trying to look up the previous years, Frank, because last year was pretty clear, but I think all the votes leading up to that, all were for the use of putting the money away. The fact that the state changed that and then we pushed it through like that, I mean, there was a lot of us that didn't agree with you on that particular thing. Welcome to America, where it's,
Actually, the change that was made 4 years ago when the fund was pushing $1 million, and what ended up happening, actually at the time it was 680,000. And what at the time we did was change the distribution from 100% of the land use change
Yep.
tax to an 80/20. That wasn't the state, that was the citizens.
no, and I spoke against that as well.
And that was amended at the deliberative session to that number,
That's correct.
because you were in after a lot more than that.
Now, one of the slides that's following that summary of the warrant article goes on to say that the law allows the commission to, quote, "manage and control land and resources acquired or given to them."
See, ironically, when this fund was started out in 1971, it was the Town Conservation Fund. In the 90s, as deposits were made, its name was subtly changed to the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund. So it began putting the message out that it was land acquisition. Then in the late 90s, they picked up an "and" in there, so it was the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund.
It also goes on to give examples of projects that this fund would be used for, such as tree planting, trail maintenance, field maintenance, milfoil control, and dairy pond.
Yeah, now that he said that, I mean, the intent was clear. Now, if somebody didn't understand it, that's a different story, but the intent was made clear.
Article 19, 2002, is see if the town will vote to deposit 100% of the revenues collected under RSA 79A, the land use change tax, in the Conservation and Land Acquisition Fund previously established in accordance with RSA 36A. So, I mean, if you go back, those votes by the town were clear that they supported putting the money away. Last year, they said,
What year was
spend some of it. Pardon?
What year, I'm sorry, what year?
2002.
And by the way,
Goes back to Bill's point from, was it yours or Chris, where I said as far as the town voted, and like you said.
Number of years.
Yeah, 13 years ago they voted that way.
Yeah, but
No,
that was only one of many votes.
no, but what I'm getting at is they just voted last year.
Yes.
Last year.
Yeah, so that's right, and it was like an update to the vote, which was good. They had another vote, and it was clarified. And I might disagree with that, because I guess I was all for the expensive milfoil for that, but I believe now, after reading that, the intent was clear.
Yeah, I think so, too.
The intent was clear. So
And that's why I asked what the wording
Right.
was.
The intent was clear to what?
The intent was clear in that warrant that the Conservation Fund should be responsible out of their own fund for the maintenance of like Moore's Fall. It was clear.
In the subsequent
Yeah.
discussion of it,
The
it wasn't
discussion.
part of the warrant article.
Deliberative session with 50 people there, Chris, now, come on.
Now, the town conservation fund.
I know, but when it goes the other way and something I disagree
Just
with.
to make you aware.
They say
That's the same
50
thing.
people, right.
Just to make you aware, and there's only one person in this room who will remember this, is the Town Conservation Fund was created in 1971.
Before my time.
The town of Litchfield was populated with forward-thinking people at that time.
About
Most
2,000
of them lived on Route 3A
All right,
in 1971.
I
All
have
right.
a couple of questions.
okay, go ahead, Bill.
Do we have a calendar for the rest of the year?
Yes.
Yep.
With definitive dates on it?
Yes, the only dates that are not definitive are, yes, yep, is the potential hearing dates, and I'm not aware of that the deliberative dates have been set yet.
So, we don't have those, okay.
And that would be on the portal thing? That
That
calendar?
schedule, no, I don't, if somebody would like to give me that schedule, I'd be happy to post it. Thank you.
Good.
Do we have
So I'll go on the portal then under
Yeah,
schedule?
I'll put
I
this up on
created
the
this,
schedule.
and then I lost it on my computer, so
So
I
it
need to
will be
recreate
helpful if I
it.
post this, then, is what
Yes,
you're
it
saying.
will.
Okay,
So I only have a paper copy now.
okay.
Okay, so if I understand this, on January 6th, we'll be voting the bottom lines on both school and town budget?
On January,
Final
January.
vote on all accounts. That's correct, according to this.
On all,
No, that's my understanding.
on the 12th.
It's on.
One was set aside for school and one was set aside for town. And I don't see it specified here, but I know I have it somewhere.
According to this, it says town budget review schedule, and we end up on, just to give you the answer, on 1/6/15, we're
Yep.
supposed to have the financial impact of warrant articles and any potential edits. And then on 1/6/15, we're also supposed to have a final vote on all accounts, is what it
Yes,
says.
town voting.
And,
And on the 8th is school voting.
and 8th on the school building?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a school schedule?
We're meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays in the month of
Do we know what
December.
we're reviewing in those dates?
I do not have that information. I haven't received any information from the schools.
Would it be helpful if I send you what we did last year? Just as a baseline?
That would be helpful.
Sure.
So I don't have any information from the schools. I know they had set a schedule for themselves to look at their own budget calendar, but I haven't, I don't know where, I haven't received any information from the schools yet. But right now, we have set aside 6 days in December.
And do
So
we have a date when we're going to get to the school budget?
That's what we did last year.
Okay.
Do we have a date when we're going to get the school budget?
I believe a date was sent. I know they're going to be finalized, I believe, the 19th. I believe we're going to be voting them all on the 19th.
And I think we are supposed to get them either the next day, I think. Which,
The 20th?
the 20th, yeah.
Okay.
Which leads me to a question, I'm sorry, that you had as far as who's going to be requesting paper.
I sent it. Just for everybody.
So it looks like everybody wants a paper
No, I
copy.
Oh, we should be talking, you're looking at you.
Sorry, Michelle.
And one Excel,
Take paper and
And
plastic.
standard to what was provided in years past, the Excel.
the Excel for Andrew to keep track.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Really, because you can't understand it when they give it to you.
All right, is there
Is
anything else? I have 2 items. Just one, just how we work as a committee. I want to make sure that we are working together and that we're respectful for each other. You know, as Chris has said a couple of times, it's not personal. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to like how the votes end up. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some.
Lost a lot tonight.
And I want to make it clear, in my opinion, when we have a vote, I think it's appropriate, if you don't understand why someone voted, to say, I don't understand why you supported that or didn't support it. What I don't think is appropriate is to then criticize why the person voted the way they did. I think we need to be very careful about that, and that might be a fine line to balance, but I feel like in my second thing that I wanted to address tonight, it seems that last week, Dan and I were called out for votes we made. For the reasons we made our votes, because actually we voted in opposite directions. He voted one way, I voted the other way, but we were called out for why we voted. We weren't following the voters.
That's right.
So,
That
and
will
it was
continue to do it,
interesting.
Cindy.
It was interesting to me, Bill, because I don't ever recall there being a referendum on town budgets about them wanting all positions to be in warrant articles.
You are 100% correct.
There are, however, 2 votes that took place, referendums, on the school board side. The most recent, the latest one, is very specific, and it passed. Shall the Litchfield School District support the school board in placing in the operating budget those positions agreed to by the Budget Committee that are needed to meet minimum state and federal standards or to maintain services at current year levels? It was passed, 1,073 votes to 921 votes no. So that is my basis for following what the voters said, which is based on the Budget Committee's analysis, that independent look, and whether or not is needed to maintain current levels. If the argument is made to maintain those current levels, that is the rationale I used for the vote we had last week. And
What
so,
I referenced, Cindy, was a question that was asked of you and to Dan as to whether or not we would follow the voters' direction of having new positions as separate warrant articles.
And that was
And
never the
answer-
voter's
And the
position.
answer was, yes, you would, yes, you would, yes, you would.
The question was, would we follow the
The question
voter?
was, I asked the question, I know what I asked. And that was what I asked.
Well, I'm sorry, our memories are different.
Well, my memory is very clear on it, Cindy, because I
I
did it
wanted
for specific
to
purpose.
make it clear that the warrant article.
In this specific situation.
And there's no disagreement on what the warrant article says with me, okay?
Okay, so there was never a voter direction to do anything different than this.
It was Bill's direction.
It was what the vote, what you told the voters you would support. That was what got me when you said what you did, okay? And I'm over with it now.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I'll give you a few moments, but I do want to go back to, this is why I think what we need to do is be respectful of why we voted. If you don't understand it, feel free to ask. But I think the criticism, if you don't like it, then you need to, outside of a meeting, you need to call up the person, say, hey, I don't get it, what'd you do, you shouldn't have done that. That's when that should take place. But in the meeting, I think we need to work as a committee.
I'll try to stay with
And
it, Cindy.
be respectful.
As long as we're all on the same page. I'll try to.
Dan, did you have a?
Yeah, I wasn't looking this as a new position. There's somebody already doing that job for free. That's how I was looking at it. You guys are prepared to pass a $50,000 to $70,000 bill when we can save the taxpayers, pay somebody $12,000 as opposed to $70,000. That's the way I was looking at it.
$70,000 bill.
Well, that's, you think anybody do it for 12,000? That's just,
Yeah,
that's
there's-
just the beginning of a very long,
Yeah, I know, but I'm looking at it as of now. There's somebody in there already doing that for free.
Which isn't a new position because it's volunteer,
Yeah, there's no pay associated with it.
right?
Yeah.
And I think now we have.
Anyway, and to that end, Cindy, and I think this is a really good time, and I'm glad you brought that up about what the level of services are. So, if you look at the schools right now, they're starting to have declining enrollment. So providing the same number of services as the year before should cost less, I would think, on the factors that would be, if you're teaching 100 students versus 150 students, you're going to need less teachers, and it's still the same level of service. So just because we've agreed to support, as a town, the level of service, doesn't mean that it can't cost less money.
Absolutely.
It doesn't say that it's going to cost more every year. It says that we're going to support that level of service, and that level of service may cost less. So-
Yep, you're absolutely right.
And it may not.
Yep.
And it may not, and which has been the case right along, because we always find a way to spend the money.
And when we get the school budget, I'm sure we'll have lively discussions about that.
It's coming, right?
Look,
Technology is not cheap.
the subject,
No.
the subject of new positions in that vote, that warrant from years ago, look, it's a sore spot every year.
Yeah.
It's, it's gonna continue to be a sore spot. So I guess we all just gotta learn to.
Agree to disagree.
Well, right, but look, we should talk, you know what, maybe we could talk about it. I don't believe after a meeting you should have a phone call, maybe during member input, bring it up. And we all need to be held accountable for what we say and do, all of us, all of us. And we need to be reminded.
How are you making out with the actuals for the school budget last year?
That is also something I pinged, right?
Forwarded another email to Frank, and I'll follow up tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, I have not, and I did remind him today that I have not heard any new information, so we're still
Unfortunately, I
waiting
didn't
for
see your
that.
email till late, so I sent it to him, and I'll talk to him tomorrow.
Okay. And tours,
Yep.
okay.
Well, he said anytime. If you know a date that you're looking for, and I'll see if it fits for him.
As soon as possible.
Okay.
I mean, really.
Is there
I'd
a
like to
date?
understand the priorities of the school board first, right, and the superintendent, so I can go into the facilities and have.
So maybe early December?
Yeah, so
Or-
I can have an understanding of what the priorities are before, and what to look for.
Perhaps the week of Thanksgiving, early in the week, if people are around.
Sometime after the 20th, we prefer for me.
That's what I'm thinking.
And if it could be later in the day somehow, and then in the middle of the workday, that would be wonderful, because the town was at like 2. We
Yeah.
heard about it a couple of days before, and it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Most likely, most of us don't have a schedule that's flexible enough that we can just rip that piece of time out.
We asked people for a week, couple weeks in advance, and I know the chair sent out information.
She did, and
And we scheduled it only based upon the times that you guys wanted.
Yeah, the only feedback.
It wasn't
I-
us trying to lock people out.
Yeah, the only feedback I had was from a couple people.
I think you'll see that you had an email, as soon as that went out, that was at 2 o'clock, that was a little early for, I never seen anything up until that point
No, there were before that.
about requests for time. Just, are you interested? And the reply was yes. When it came out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, on a day where I already had meetings scheduled, it was, wow, that was really quick.
My apologies then.
That's, I would
So
just,
what am I hearing then? Late afternoon, 3, 4?
If there are other people who want a tour of the town facilities, please let us know.
I'm just thinking, maybe give us a couple options, and, one being the evening for the people that are working during the day and out of town. That's-
So-
I mean, that's,
An evening would be better?
Should probably do it after school hours, right, once everybody
yeah, if
clears
you're gonna do the
out?
schools, I would assume we're
Like
gonna do it
3,
after school
3:30,
hours.
4 o'clock?
So what I'm wondering is, what time do school board meetings usually start?
6:30.
6:30? I'm just trying to think too
Right.
of when the staff is in town. School staff isn't generally in town in the evenings. Starting though at 6:30, that doesn't really give us a lot of time before a meeting. That's why I was wondering about that.
Now, when I talk to them tomorrow, I can
All right.
inquire also, like, what time,
You let him know that evenings would be preferable to a larger number of us and see what he can come up with.
One final question while we're on topic. So for the school, and, for the 20th, yeah, I want the budget, but to do the schools, even if I have the executive summary that we've typically received, the 2 or 3 pages highlighting the priorities, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Hearing none, public input, I don't see anybody rushing in through the doors, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's made and seconded, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.
No.
well,
I'm not supposed to say no, right?